is if you've got any questions, you've been sitting there for an hour, if you have any questions of these speakers, because not all of the speakers are staying for the panel, although I might actually try and persuade as many of them to stay as possible. So this is your opportunity. You don't get these kind of opportunities very often. And the stupid question is the question that you don't ask. There is no such, well, there are plenty of stupid questions. Actually, I've asked hundreds of them. So who has a question for the existing panel? Come on, make the most of this opportunity. Anyone? Really? Really? No one has any questions at all? Someone's pointing. Someone? Oh, there, gentleman there. Sorry, I was looking over there. Yes, fantastic.
I have a question for Mr. Gupta. Could you please explain what the IP are looking for and what are the jurisdictions that the company should be registered? Okay.
I'm sorry, could you say that one more time?
What is the intellectual property IP that you're looking for when investing? And what is the jurisdiction of the company that you're looking for, that you think is best?
Yeah, so I think when I was mentioning unique IP, I think the reality is that it just has to be an interesting idea that merges both sales as well as technology. Because at the end of the day, we care about it from a perspective of barriers to entry. What's your barrier to entry? If a competitor comes along with $5 million, could he copy it in a moment because you've copied it? Yeah? But if you have some type of intellectual property, is the product distinguishable? Did it take a long time to build? I mean, these are the type of intellectual property components that we look for. And then I think your second part of your question is what stage do we invest in? We invest all across the board. We don't have very traditional LPs, very similar to what was mentioned here. You know, we have an oversized GP commitment. So I've invested so much of the money myself that we can invest in anything all the way from 100,000 to our biggest investment is Spotify. And we do it at growth stages continuously. So all across the board.
Excellent. Any more questions? Any more questions? Gentleman right at the front. Actually, look, why don't I just give you a microphone? Here we go.
Hi, my name is Wahid. I'm founder and CEO of Dakwak. I actually have two questions, or one question for two person, Yavuz and Manu. Regarding the first customers that you need, to see in the company when you decide to invest, do you think there is a number of customers that you require, or a number of revenue that you require for the company to achieve, or is it something like only one customer is fine for you? That's regarding the first customers that you think of.
So I don't think you can say, this is the amount. I know your business very well. I think, for that business, it really, the critical mass for any business is different. For your business, maybe it's 100, maybe it's 10 clients, 20 clients. For a product that you bill, maybe $100,000 a month for, if you get a client, one is enough for me. But I think the underlying principle, and this is not my quote, this is somebody else, I forget the name, but $1, somebody giving you a single dollar is a very intimate relationship. Everybody will take something that's free, but that $1 is a very intimate relationship. So even that $1 is very important.
I would just reiterate what he said. I think it just has to be representative of what your typical customer looks like. Yeah. So if it's an early stage business, you could have, a handful, and of course, depending on the stage of your company, it could be many. But and that's how VCs also think a little bit about valuation and what stage you're at, commensurate to the risk. But all I would say is that, just to reiterate, the only thing that we care about is, do people want this? Yeah? And is this something that really will build traction? Because the reality is that we want to make sure that it's representative, not that you've gotten 4 of your friends to try it out and therefore you have customers, but it has to be representative of who will actually buy.
Excellent. Oh, there we go, perfect.
Hi, my name is Ayman. I'm a co-founder for teamin.com. I have a question for Walid. we've seen through the presentation that you've seen a lot of growth potential in the Middle East, scalability, and so on. But at the same time, I sense a bit of risk averseness when it comes to investment. Why would that be?
No, actually, the opportunity is really there, and I mentioned it very clearly. Demographics, growth in internet, mobile, etc. That's the pros. The cons is mostly about how to monetize. You can have millions and millions of people viewing your page or downloading your app. If you don't make money out of it because people do not pay online or because credit card penetration is really low, the real market is UAE and Saudi. That's where the money is. Everywhere else is peanuts, unfortunately. So we have to be very careful. Of course, I'm bullish, very, very bullish about the MENA, and it's growing, and we're investing. We've done 17 investments in 3 years, $12 million so far, maybe 13. So we are very happy and investing and growing.
Fantastic. Oh, yeah, here we go. Coming thick and fast now. Right. Excellent, thank you.
Hello, my name is Haik, co-founder of cartag.com. It's a carpooling application in Egypt. Question to Walid and then the generic question. I mean, I'm coming from a perspective of, let's say, an entrepreneur from Egypt. There is a lot of adversity towards VCs and angel investors. I mean, firstly, MENA is a very mature market as far as that's concerned. But a lot of startups, and I mean, I've been consulting and dealing with a lot of, let's say, flat six, as you probably know, startups. A lot of startups are left scrambling for money, for what to do next and such after they pass their initial incubation. And I think that's not just Egypt, that's most of MENA. Now, what's being done? Why would a startup try to even come and talk to a VC or an angel, given the current situation where VC asks a big stake, usually more than an average in, let's say, Silicon Valley, and the value in exchange is little more than, let's say, network. I generalize and exaggerate, but that's the idea. And the second question to anyone, and maybe Yavuz can answer, very, very nice presentation, by the way. Yesterday, I asked the panel the same question. In tech conferences, a lot of people ask about idea and idea and idea. Ideas are commodities. Everyone has them. What about, I mean, scaling and stuff? The business has to be focused on solving a problem. So addressing society weak points, issues, or things made easier, that's what it should be all about. I don't understand why all the VCs and entrepreneurs think of ideas instead of thinking what problem or a weak point can be addressed or solved. Okay. Thanks.
Who wants to pick that one up?
I think the first question is probably addressed to me.
Yeah.
There's definitely an equity gap in the Middle East. Probably more in Egypt than anywhere else because of how big the population is and how strong the entrepreneurship spirit is. And very few angel investors and very few seed funds. You're right, you're totally right. I mean, Flat Six Labs has what, Sawari Ventures behind it? They have money, but I would imagine that very few deals are funded there. Going back to the initial presentation, who did the first presentation, by the way? Yeah, the ratio of the total population or total investable startups is much, much, much lower than the US, much lower than Europe, much lower than Turkey. And Egypt is probably at the bottom. I mean, CPM in Egypt is the lowest probably in the world, cost per minute. So, sorry about that. I wish we could do something about it.
Eric, you're going to pick that one.
Yeah, I'll do the second one, if that's all right, the second question, which is, it's a good question. So, the reason that people like a better mousetrap is because it's a known problem, and there's probably a more efficient way of doing that. So efficiencies can make a lot of money, and it's also very good for investors because they understand the size of the addressable market. But when you have a new idea, that is potentially a whole new market. I mean, you don't see very many truly novel ideas, despite the number of patents that are filed. But I mean, there's a reasonably good idea like the light bulb. That wasn't a bad one. Search engines, that's not a bad one either. These are really significant innovations, which of course spawn other efficiencies around them. So for me, it falls into two camps. A better mousetrap or real innovation. I'm oversimplifying, but that's why the two are very important to coexist.
Okay, what I'm going to do now is just...
excuse me?
Sorry. Yep, sorry. Yep, crack on.
So I will say that second question is right, but more important, even you know problem, it is just, you know, knowledge is not power, yes? So action is power, how you solve it. So by this way, many people even have idea, it is not investable from my point of view, since it is not so many great ideas coming to the people, yes? So, and actually, some stuff only God can create, yes? So not the people. But from point of view of more important to use knowledge, yes? So if you have knowledge and no action, it means that even you know problem, you don't solve it. So focus on action, build milestones. So what I will recommend.
I mean, you look at Rocket Internet in Germany, of course, has made an entire, I mean, a huge empire, an incredibly successful empire. Rocket will never claim that they are, that their innovation is in ideas. Their innovation is in execution. Rocket Internet can create a company from, they can come from an idea to the company being up and running within 20 days. So if you have a great e-commerce idea, watch out, because Rocket will out-execute you relentlessly, and they're phenomenal at it. Right, so what we're going to do, if anyone has to leave the panel, then please feel free to. Those people who were told they were joining the panel, please come up. I'm not quite sure, it's all been rather fluid. So if you have to go, I mean, thank you very much indeed for your time. Yeah, no, thanks very much. Anyone that has to go, please do, don't worry. Thank you very much. It's organic. You don't get to go. Sit down. Sit down, where are you all going? Right, we now have even more opportunity. Very briefly, the people who've joined the panel, Carson and Habib, do you want to introduce yourselves? And just explain who you are, and then we will carry on where we were with asking questions. So, Carson and Habib, if you just want to introduce yourselves.
Sure, I'll go first. I'm a serial technology entrepreneur based in Berlin, Germany, and I've raised 4 venture capital rounds, 2 in Germany and 2 in the US. And that's something which is incredibly hard to do from Germany to raise funding in the US. So I'm happy to take any questions which are related to how to fundraise in the US especially. In the US, excellent. And Habib, do you want to just...
My name is Habib Haddad, I'm the CEO of WAMDA. I used to be a serial entrepreneur, and recently, in the past 2 years, I've moved to the dark side of investing. Now we're on a platform investment VC fund where we have the largest media arm focused on entrepreneurship stories in the Middle East. Think of it as TechCrunch of the Middle East, and programs and entrepreneurship programs and mentorship programs, as well as VC fund. The last 3 years combined with our sister funds, we've deployed about $20 million in 69 companies.
Fantastic. Right, who here wants to raise money in the US? Excellent. Right, you must have questions to ask Carson about how did he raise money in the US. Have I got a spare mic? You guys got one? So who's got some questions now? Gentleman at the front, I'm going to pick on you. Can we get a mic? Hang on, I've got one here. Here we go. This is how it now works. I ask questions of the audience.
Hi, I'm Sergio. I'm from Recognized Startup Business. I'm having a question more about finding the customer. For example, we are now hitting the US market, and I'm kind of concerned about how to find the proper customer who will pay for the service. One option is to keep hitting some certain vertical, but your competitors can overcome you. Or when should you feel or see what kind of indicators should you measure to see when you stop hitting certain verticals and move further to another verticals to find the customer, or to hit some mass market from the start.
Right. So it's really about
Can you tell us more about what you're building, just so, because without context, a bit hard to...
Yeah, it's a SaaS platform to increase employees' engagement through social recognition and rewards.
Okay. Customers.
Yeah, so I think first your customers, you're based in Turkey?
No, in Ukraine.
In the Ukraine, and your end target customer is an American, a US customer.
Yes.
And have you done early testing? Have you done, have you gone and fielded?
No, we have subscribed customers using it so far.
Okay.
But it's not the clear profile of the vertical of either it's some IT or agriculture or banking. Who will pay for it?
Yeah, ideally, I mean, this seems like a perfect example for product market fit for applying the lean canvas model of fixing one of your assumptions and playing with your hypotheses. I don't know if have you seen the model, the lean startup machine model? Have you played with that? So that's one thing that I definitely advise to do, but I think you might want to spend some time close to your customers. So I think you try to find, I don't know, maybe 500 startups have an accelerator program or others. That's for our companies who we invest in, who are based in the Middle East, so far away from their market, which their target market is the US. Definitely being there is a must. And I think Wahid here can tell you more about that because he has built a company from Jordan focused on the US. And only when he went to the US and spent 3 months with 500 startups, he was able to quickly pivot. Because speed is your number one thing right now. And you need to be there close to your target. So we can come up with lots of theories, but I think just going close to your market is the best advice I can give you.
Get in there with your market.
Geographically going close to there.
Yes,
yeah?
definitely. Because you want to see how they interact with your product. You want to also come up with landing pages of seeing if they pay for one product or the next. If they don't pay, you might want to pick up the phone and call them. You want to go see them. That whole interaction at the beginning is priceless, and you have to do it. You don't have to be based there for the rest of the company's life, but you have to be there initially to understand your business model.
Thanks.
Excellent. Great advice. So be where your customers are. Any other questions? Any other questions? We're going to do this again. I'm going to ask you a question and then pick on someone if we're not careful. Raising funds in the US, between 2 times and 3 times the amount of investment per capita in the US. Who wants a slice of that? Nobody wants that. You're all perfectly happy with your investment strategies? No? Gentlemen here. There we go.
Well, my question is actually not about raising funds in the US. I tried and I failed myself, so it's more about raising funds in Middle East and Northern Africa. So it happens so that the product that we built has attracted much more significant traction in this region than in the region that was initially targeted for us. And now we need money and we need strategic partnership in the region, so we are in process of approaching it. Any advice? First of all, is it realistic for a non-MENA company? We are based in UK, Austria, and the development team is based in Ukraine. So, but my co-founder is of Syrian origin. Probably this helps. And
your market is here?
Is it realistic at all? And what should be the first steps to take? Any tricks and anything like that?
I just want to be clear. So you're not based in the MENA region, but your customers are targeted in is the MENA region?
Yes, because we saw lots of traction from there.
Okay, interesting. What is it you do?
That's why we are thinking about some geographical pivot. And
so what is it you do?
Not thinking, we have already decided. It's a voice Twitter. It's a social network for where people can exchange short voice messages. Then can getting combined into one smooth stream, which you can listen to like to online radio, and you can put music on the background, and so on.
Cool.
So it grew much more popular among people in the Middle East than it was in Europe.
Walid, I'm looking to you.
Thank you.
There's a mic there on the table. Thanks.
Okay, the business seems interesting. Geography is challenging for us. Our mandate is quite strict on this point. I mean, the market definitely has to be global, okay, regional or global. Having a market being MENA and geographical back office and presence, the kitchen is in Europe. It doesn't fit our mandate, unfortunately. You'll have to move. But, I mean, let's discuss this offline. Maybe it's probably better.
But let me also comment on that, because also we invest in MENA primarily. I mean, actually only in MENA. I think a few advice. First, a few funds like us and MEVP have a clear mandate of where we want to deploy our money in. That's based on our investors in the fund and us selling the story of the fund of investing. However, angel investors don't care about that. In your case, and I've seen a company similar to your case called Teli, based in the US, with one of the founders is a Palestinian. They do Twitter video tweets, basically. Think of it very simplistically. Most of their clients came from Saudi Arabia. They said we can monetize there. So what they did is actually went and opened a subsidiary in Dubai. Why Dubai? Is because Dubai is very commoditized with advertising agencies, and then they were able to attract money there locally. So I think if you have a market here, and if you think you can monetize on it, because that's really important for investors in emerging markets, so many risks, at least you have to hedge some of the risks. is come and try to see who we can partner with on the ground, ideally someone with the sales connections, and then look for angel investors first. And then when you grow your team here, then when you go to VC funds, when you fit the mandates of the early VCs in the region.
Excellent. You wanted a second go? The more the merrier.
So now about raising, like, would you recommend, like, if I want to raise funds in the US to develop the product, so should I like hang out on the events like this, like trying to pitch, trying to find the investors, or I should move myself there, like to the valley, for example, and hang out like with the investors, hang out like, try to hunt them and find those like investments that I need? Like, or I should like be still in the Europe and pitch in the emails, pitch in like some Twitter messages, what is kind of useless.
I would certainly recommend, if you're serious about raising funding directly in the US, you need to be on the ground in the US, so you need to travel there or move there probably for a time period of 3 to 6 months, number one. Number two, if you don't have any revenue or if you don't have any angle to the US and your whole product operation, customers, everything is here in Europe, then a lot of the US VCs will not be interested by definition. There's a smaller handful of VCs who are actually sitting in the US, either in Silicon Valley or in New York, who only invest outside of the US. For example, Peter Thiel and his fund, Valar, they have a mandate to only invest outside of the US, so they have done deals in Brazil and New Zealand and Australia, and so he would be one of the very few that would invest if you don't have any angle to the US. But I would strongly advise to find them on the ground in the US because, let's be realistic, they have so many startups to choose from, and especially the Silicon Valley-based VCs. They're how shall I say it? I mean, they have a very strong ego, and so they don't like traveling around the world too much. So you need to actually go onto Sand Hill Road, and then you have about 100 of them within a mile to choose from, and you need to go into their offices. Last comment, try to find someone who recommends you. Cold calling or sending an email to info@whatever.com usually doesn't do the trick, so hunt them down on Twitter, on LinkedIn, wherever, and then try to get a recommendation from a mutual friend.
Eric, you want to join?
Yeah, it's a couple of things to say on that. So if you're from the Middle East or the MENA region and you think that you can go to Sand Hill Road and compete with some of the most amazingly expert entrepreneurs who have done it before, who have all the contacts and part of the ecosystem, it is possible, but it's very hard. Actually, what I'd love to see the MENA region do is develop its own outstanding investing capacity. And so, for example, if you're thinking of being an angel investor, it's almost a certain way of investing money and learning a little bit, but you're probably going to lose money the first few times you do that. So my best advice to the angel investor community here is to start to co-invest with people that have experience or become LPs in their funds and work with them and maybe do co-investments. I think that developing your own indigenous community, especially if your customer market is here, is a really good differentiator. Now, my ideal solution would be to get US investors to become LPs or partners in MENA-based funds. Because then when you do that expansion to the US, you've got people who really care about you, who've got some money in the game.
I want to add the one point. I totally agree with both of my panelists here. The other thing I want to add on based on that is my previous startup was targeting the Middle East, and I fundraised in the US, and one of my investors was Lebanese, I'm Lebanese, diaspora based in the Valley, who found it an interesting way to kind of reconnect and found a good opportunity to support a local entrepreneur. Once I got that, it opened lots of doors. So if you can find that Ukrainian diaspora or someone, that's really, really important. And you can suck up to them and you can use lots of different cards. Another thing is try to take money from people who co-invest with others. For example, we co-invest with 500 startups. This is how Wahid got connected with Dave McClure and went to the Valley and then got there. So I think the most important part I think that Carson mentioned is, investors there don't have too much time, and there's so much happy coming their way. If they come in very uniquely directed and referred, it's a really good thing. Diaspora for me would be the first thing if you're doing angel. If bigger, then go to VCs who co-invest.
Well, let me also, Ben, one small comment to my earlier comments, just to put it into perspective. We did have a seed round and an A round in the company already, and then when we scaled for a B and a C round, at that point we went to the US. So I think it was incredibly hard without any prior funding to go directly to the US, and I wouldn't advise trying to do that. I agree with your earlier comment there. That's incredibly hard to do without a track record.
I was just going to ask you a question about what about the what about the US operations based in Europe as a bridge? I mean, Accel Partners, for example, which is a big investment firm, has an office out of London. In your experience, has it worked that you could use the London end, or if they're operating here anywhere in Europe or
well, if they have a EU presence, then you need to talk to the local guys on the ground, and they'll likely be in London. Very few are in Paris or Stockholm, so then go to London. It's not advisable to try to circumvent the local guys and go directly to the US, because they'll likely redirect you to the London office anyhow. So if they do have a presence, a good comment, Ben, then you need to go to London.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question, and then we have the startup panel. We'll see what happens on that one. Any more questions? Any more questions on the floor? This is your final opportunity. You're obviously all incredibly happy. You've all got enough money. There we go. Gentlemen at the back. I'll come down to you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Josias from Session. What about the legal part of the story? We're a Madrid-based company. If ever we want to raise money there, should we create a company there, or it's okay being just like legally based in Europe?
Well, we've done it with a German entity, so both the US investors invested into a German limited company, so they're okay with it. Try to look for a VC who has already done deals in Germany, or in Spain, or wherever you're coming from, so that they are familiar with the local legal system, and they're not doing it for a first time. If they are actually doing it for the first time, then make sure that you calculate an additional 2 to 3 months into the timing of your process, because it will take longer if you need to educate them how your local system works. On the latest round, when it starts to get bigger and you're at the growth stage, then it's advisable to spend the roughly 100,000 US you need to set up a Delaware Inc. And get a US legal framework around it, because by doing that you're opening up your potential investor universe, because some have hard rules to only invest into US-based inks.
Let me ask, just follow on that question, one question. It was mentioned during the presentations about all of your documentation being in English. Is that something that, that you would agree?
Strongly advisable, even though we were in Germany and we raised with German funds, we did all the paperwork in English, number one, and number two, also try to get one of the large 4 or 5 global consulting and firms like Ernst & Young to actually do the auditing of your annual accounts. It's just an additional stamp and a seal that you're not using some local small tax firm, but that you're using one of the top global 4 players. Then there's no questions asked if the numbers are really correct or not. And they're not that much more expensive. Actually, most of them have startup programs even, where you get the full package for around 10,000 euros, which is quite a bit of money, but it's a good investment.
Because they did such a great job with Enron, after all. But never mind. I think that's about it for this session. The next session coming up, I'm slightly concerned about, is the startup presentations, the startup panel, because we don't actually have a jury at the moment, so I can be judge, jury, and executioner all in one. I don't know who's on the jury. Well, you're it. Well, there we go. It's just you. So thank you very much indeed. Take a short break while we assemble the jury. Are the startups who are presenting, if they're here, could they come up?